Oh my gosh, we're going to have an incredible conversation. Rachel and I talked earlier on the pre-interview call. It was just a blast. She's full of wisdom and it's really going to make a difference. So stick around. In the meantime, let's talk about the sponsor message. If you're an entrepreneur, a high achiever, and you want to get your message out in a bigger way, impact more people's lives, and you feel like you're falling short, you're not quite hitting the mark, and you want to expand yourself, your message, your platform, and reach more people, send me a message. Would love to hear about what your biggest dreams and goals are. Maybe the 12-hour marathon is a fit for you. Maybe starting your own podcast, getting some breakthrough coaching, whatever it is for you. I'm happy to provide you or connect you to one of these awesome people who are on the show as well, because they have an enormous array of skills and abilities and gifts that I may not have. So I love connecting people. Next up is the iTunes review of the week. This week, the iTunes review is by... it's by Nikisha Ware. And Nikisha says, I listened to my first Chris Burns podcast and I am blown away. He makes it so clear the power of clarity and exactly what we can do to get it. I'm excited to hear more fire. Nikisha, thank you so much for sharing. And if you want to give us a review, go to beyourgps.com/iTunes or search Becoming Your Greatest Possible Self on the iTunes Store. And you can give us a review there. Thank you in advance for doing that, letting us know what you love, what you want to see more of, and how we can support you in growing into your GPS, Greatest Possible Self. So I'm going to bring on Rachel in just a second. We're going to be diving into this conversation, how to release shoulds and other people's goals, OPGs. We're going to get rid of that nonsense. And before that, make sure you grab a piece of paper, grab a pen, be ready to take notes, because this could truly be the one thing that you've been looking for and seeking and searching for that makes a difference for you to step into your greatest possible self, to achieve your biggest dreams and goals. So stay all the way through till the end, because you never know what one idea that we talk about today could make all the difference for you. Let's introduce Rachel, and then we'll bring her on. Rachel S. Heslin has been immersed in the study of psychology for over 35 years. That's a long time. Her father, a clinical psychologist, taught his children his craft, such that Rachel has been refining her analytical and reframing skills since a very young age. Rachel is currently the author of 2 books, Navigating Life, 8 Different Strategies to Guide Your Way, and Rituals of Release, How to Make Room for Your New Life. Rituals of Release is the first book of her Handbooks for Healing series. Upcoming books in the series include Deeper Sorrow, Greater Joy, Receiving the Gift of Grief, and Permission to Go On, The Power of Self-Forgiveness. Her work through her company, The Fullness of Your Power, helps people embrace all parts of themselves so they can live deeper, richer, and more fulfilling lives. And we are blessed to have her here with us today. Rachel, are you ready to rock the house?
Oh, most definitely.
Yes! We're now live on Becoming Your Greatest Possible Self. Rachel, thank you for being here and for showing up as your greatest possible self and educating our audience how we can release those shoulds and other people's goals and truly align with what's important and true to us. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Awesome. So let's dive right into the theme of the day, which is messages that stick. So how does this concept of messages that stick show up in your life, Rachel?
Couple different ways. One of them is, okay, this is interesting. I've got 2 things that come up. I'm going to share the personal one first.
Okay.
My guidance, subconscious, all that sort of thing speaks to me in song lyrics. If there is something that I need to know, or if I'm asking myself, what is the core of the situation? Why does it bother me? Why does it inspire me? I'll have song lyrics come up.
Wow.
And there's something about music that brings up the feelings. So it's both the lyrics and the music. And one of the reasons it sticks is that music makes it come in on a more visceral level. Now, this is interesting. I brought up the personal one, but one of the things I found in my business is I need to be aligned with myself.
Yeah.
I mean, I love the whole what you talk about becoming your greatest possible self, that it stands for GPS,
Yep.
so that you are your own guidance system.
That's right.
And
That's right.
when I am aligned with that feeling, with that message, when I'm being completely honest with myself, that's when it sticks, because that's when it's coming from the heart. And when you have that core, that's when it really resonates.
Yeah.
Because one of the things that I found as I'm developing my business is a lot of standard marketing techniques seem to be based on the idea of convincing other people that they need what you have. And what I've actually found is that the best marketing is when you emphasize clarity.
Yeah.
Exactly what is it that you offer? Who is going to benefit? What are they going to get out of it?
Yeah.
And then magnify it. And the reason that it sticks is not because you're pushing so hard, but because people are looking for that. And when it resonates, it really connects you with those people that you're here for.
Oh my gosh.
I don't know if that answers the question you were looking for, but
so it's so good. It's so good. It's like when it's like really aligned. I hear the alignment is such an important part of it. You know, it's like when you hear those song lyrics in the music, it's a visceral experience that feels aligned with enthusiasm, with joy, with aliveness. And then same thing with the marketing messages. Like when it's aligned, when it's clear, when it makes sense, the right people will hear it. They'll be magnetized to it. They'll say, that's what I've been looking for, versus trying to pressure with fear and all these other marketing manipulation tactics that are going on in the marketplace.
Yeah.
That's incredible. I love that, Rachel. Super powerful response. Really, really great stuff. And for people who are just getting to know you, why don't you share a little bit more about what you stand for, what your clients come to you for, and how you serve them?
I stand for acceptance. And let me clarify this. So much of our lives seem to be directed towards making judgments or living up to other people's expectations, or trying to figure out, what am I supposed to be doing? What should I do? Who am I supposed to be? And a lot of times we lose track of the fact that we already are people. And I'm not quite sure how to express this, but what I do is I help people see who they really are. Because sometimes you're so close to it. I mean, they talk about a fish doesn't know it's in water. I believe that everybody actually has the resources that they need in order to live these amazing lives, but they may not know how to access those resources. They don't know who they really are. And so I see my role as holding up a mirror. You can't see the back of your head. You can't see everything from your perspective. And sometimes it helps having someone say, hey, I noticed this, and just shift the angle enough that it opens up whole new vistas of possibility.
I love it. I love it. I like to say whole new realms of possibility, right? It's like a dimension, a whole new dimension of life and what's possible. And, you know, I really love what you said there about the resources are within us. On our pre-interview call, you mentioned something really similar to this. And I was like, that's it. You know, it's like we all have these resources within us. We just get to go activate them, or have the people around us who can activate them or help us activate them. And I thought that was really, really powerful, because when we recognize that we already have everything that we need, we don't feel any lack or scarcity. We feel abundance. We know that we're more than enough.
Exactly.
Yeah, it's good. It's good. So I want to dive back into your journey, because I mentioned in the intro you have 35 years of you know, being involved with psychology, and that's an incredible amount of time. So let's go back and talk about What was it like growing up with psychology in your household, and how did that evolve?
It was fascinating. When I talk about at a young age, I was first introduced to neurolinguistic programming concepts when I was 9 years old.
Wow. Yeah.
I think the part of it that's most important as far as how it influenced my journey
Mm-hmm.
is the idea that how we perceive the world is a perception as opposed to truth about the world.
Mm.
The human brain goes through certain physiological changes, especially during childhood.
Yeah.
Because I learned that our perceptions are not necessarily truth at a very young age, prior to a lot of these brain changes, it became the way that I look at the world.
Mm.
So instead of really being driven to convince other people that I'm right, it helped instill a sense of curiosity. Why do people do the things they do? How do you see things that's different from how I see things?
Mm.
Why is it that we can be in exactly the same situation, but have completely different experiences of it?
Yeah.
That's kind of how I approach my life.
Mm.
And it's that curiosity that leads me forward. And the nice thing about it is I don't think I'll ever be done because there's so many things to discover.
Yeah. Yeah. So very early on, you started recognizing that it was about your perception that really shaped and created your reality. So you became responsible for what's the result? What's the output? Okay. How do we change the input? How do we change the angle, the perspective that we're seeing these things through, or the meaning that we're giving it, the understanding, so that we can create a different output, a different result?
Exactly.
Yeah.
And some of it also, I mentioned that part of what I stand for is acceptance.
Yeah.
Because the truth is, we don't necessarily have control of the output.
Mm.
Things happen. But to embrace the idea of I will do everything I can and expand my ideas of what I can do.
Mm.
Therefore, regardless of what the outcome is, I am at peace in my heart, and I can always look at the outcome as another source of data.
Yep.
Life continues. Okay, I do this. Did it have the result I want? Not necessarily. What can I learn about it? But as long as I have that feeling of internal integrity that I am doing everything I can do, then I can accept that it's not always going to turn out the way I wanted it to.
Yeah.
And sometimes the way it turns out is better than I could have ever imagined.
Yeah. Yeah. So along the journey, what made you decide to go even deeper into the field of psychology and create a profession around that?
It's funny. It's only recently, the last half dozen years, that I've started looking at doing it as a profession,
Wow.
because I had this weird story that if I really enjoyed something, then it was somehow bad to make money.
No.
Yeah.
I think don't. I think entrepreneurs who want to live their purpose and their passion, that is like so common.
Yeah, so I figured, well, that's not the way it's supposed to be, and work is supposed to be hard,
Oh.
and blah, blah, blah. And after a while, I thought, that's making me miserable.
Yeah.
I love helping people. I love the look, or that when their energy shifts, and that all of a sudden it's like, wow, I never saw it that way before.
Yeah.
And they just open and their energy expands and they're happy. And I get jazzed. I love that. And what I found is that people are excited about showing their appreciation in financial ways that isn't the problem that I thought it was. I mean, I will be perfectly honest. It is very important to me to have respect for the client.
Yep.
I know that money means different things to different people.
Yep.
I mean, go on eBay. Right there, you can say, like, wow, you spent that much money on that. Well, obviously, it was worth it to them. I know the value that I give my clients, but I also want to be able to help as many people as possible. And I work with them to say, hey, how do we make this not just a win-win situation, but how do we support each other in a way that has synergy, that is so much more than either of us on our own?
Yeah.
And it's interesting because I say that, and the truth is, I think I learn just as much from my clients as they do from me.
Yep. It's like, I've always found when I'm being a mirror, and I'm sure you can see the same thing, when you're being a mirror, if your stuff, if I hadn't dealt with my stuff for that day, if I haven't put myself in the right state of mind to be a powerful, reflective mirror and not bring my stuff into the conversation, then it's not going to be as powerful. And it's like, I get to notice that. And if someone is dealing with something that I have dealt with or haven't yet dealt with, then, it's like, it'll trigger me more than if I had, gone through it and grown through it and say, oh yeah, I've been through that. Here's what I did. Boom, mirror.
Yeah.
That's awesome.
Oh yeah. So one of the aspects of my journey that I have been learning as I go is that dynamic reciprocity, that being alive with someone else and recognizing that there's something about that combination of energy that produces the best results.
It's interesting. I've found something similar, like I am able to come alive when I have that relationship to bounce ideas off of and see things from a different perspective. And there's we're talking about perspective, and as one viewer or observer or creator of life, like we don't have every single objective view or perspective view that we could have. So bringing in another one just creates, it's the mastermind principle, mastermind effect. 1 + 1 doesn't equal 2; it equals like 11 or 100 or whatever. It's like there's so much more possibilities that open up.
Oh yeah.
Good stuff, Rachel. So, as far as other people's goals and these shoulds that we may have picked up along the way, what do we need to know about that?
I think the first thing that it's important to recognize is that it's normal. We are designed to play nicely with others. People talk about things like being a people pleaser as if it's something shameful. But the truth is, if you go back, you can see that as a child, your entire life depends on other people.
Wow.
You don't want to disappoint your parents because when you're 3 years old, if they decide they don't want you anymore, you're kind of out of luck. I mean, that's a problem. I had mentioned the brain shifts that happen. There's about 3 years old, 7 adolescents. At each of those points, structure of our brain changes such that anything we learned prior to that time feels like truth. It's locked in. That's the way the world is. This can be challenging because when you're 3, you have a lot fewer resources than when you're 27. But if you don't realize that this is what that kind of gut reaction is, it's difficult to make choices based on your current resources.
Yeah.
When I talk about other people's goals, I differentiate between obvious OPGs and the hidden ones. The obvious ones are when someone comes to work and says, hey, can you help me on this project? Or can you volunteer for this activity? Or that sort of thing. It's obvious. They come to you and say, hey, I want you to do this.
Right.
those are a lot easier to assess and decide how you want to deal with it.
Yeah.
Sometimes yes, sometimes no. The ones that are insidious are the hidden OPGs, because those are the ones that we have taken on either from our parents or society or friends or things we've seen on television, and we think that's the way it's supposed to be. You're supposed to work 9 to 5 until you're 65, and then you can retire. I mean, that's something that a lot of people see as, well, that's just the way that it is. And they don't realize that these are assumptions, not truth. I think it's important to question assumptions. Look at, okay, am I doing what I am really here to do? I believe that each of us has a unique contribution to make to the world. If we're spending all of our time trying to be what we think we're supposed to be instead of who we actually are, we're actually robbing the world of our contribution. It is
our greatest gifts, our greatest ability to add value and serve people and inspire. And it's like add values, make a difference, is leave an impact, have people be happier, more fulfilled, better off because of us being here. It really takes knowing that we're living our purpose, knowing that we're in alignment with that greatest possible self.
Exactly. And I actually want to bring this back, what we were talking about, being in relationship with another person.
Yeah.
One of the things I found for a lot of people who are in the personal development and healing fields is they feel the weight of the world. Like they think they need to save the world all on their own, and it creates a great stress and burnout, essentially. It's important to realize there are an awful lot of us doing this. So when I talk about unique contributions, I see it as, what is my thread of the tapestry? How do we come together and work together? And each of us has our own texture and color and weave. But when we come together, it creates this beautiful picture.
It's good. It's good. I like it. And I think I have a perspective of consciousness in our soul's journey, so to speak, that we chose this path to be here, and in whatever kind of challenges or obstacles that we go and grow through, like we gain wisdom, we gain something to serve the world and our fellow human beings with. And like everyone is going through something to be able to serve other people with. And whatever the challenges and difficulties we've gone through also help shape and refine our skills and our abilities and our gifts. And someone may have the gift of communication, and someone else may have the gift of being able to move heavy things in an efficient way, and without both of those at this time and place, our world wouldn't work the way it does. So everyone's gifts are equally valuable and play an equally important role in that tapestry being the beautiful masterpiece that it is.
See, I love what you said about going in with the idea that we chose this. I believe when I was talking about, I recognize that my perception is perception and not truth. I have made my peace with the idea that it is quite possible that I am 100% wrong about everything. Therefore, I choose to believe those things that I find inspiring and empowering. Which perspectives move my life forward? And I love what you said about looking at life as we chose this path from a spiritual aspect. Because so many times we look around and say, wow, it shouldn't be like this. When we're struggling, when we've got that challenge, that block of it shouldn't be like this prevents us from moving through it. It takes energy away from learning from it and moving through the experience. which goes back to the should, because I think the word should is essentially a denial of reality.
Yeah.
It's normal. I just don't think it's efficient.
I'm curious in terms of, because if it shouldn't be like this is a way that people try to deny reality, is it should be like this, it's supposed to be like this. Is that a acceptance and an embrace?
Well, no. It's kind of like the opposite of love isn't hate. The opposite of love is indifference.
Yeah.
In this way, the opposite of it shouldn't be that way is, okay, this is the way that it is. How would I like it to be? And what can I do to help move it in that direction? The should is a period. What do I want is a question. And essentially a colon, what's next?
Wow. So what is embrace? Because we talked about that. Is embrace a question? Is embrace a statement? Tell us. Let's dive into that a little bit more.
I often use the term embrace when talking about aspects of ourselves. We each have qualities that we may be afraid of, we may not like, we may have judgment about. As long as we are in denial and fighting against ourselves, we're making our lives more difficult. We're not in flow. We're not present. One of my personal ones, but things I've needed to embrace is the idea of judgment. I don't like being judgmental. And when I say that, I'm just talking about embracing the judgmental aspects, what I discovered is it's not necessarily seeing, not embracing the judgment itself, but embracing that part of myself that is afraid it will never be enough. That's one of my core fears, is regardless of how much I do or who I am, I can never be or do enough. I mean, people talk about limiting beliefs and getting rid of limiting beliefs. But again, if they came on board prior to one of the brain changes, it's still there. It's not a matter of like, oh, I'm not going to do that anymore. But if you learn how to recognize it and say, hey, I see you. Learn to love yourself, embrace yourself, nurture yourself. It makes it easier so that it's no longer a limbic knee-jerk, I'm totally an awful person reaction to it. It's more of a, oh yeah, I remember feeling this way. That's not fun.
Yeah.
What can I do to send love to that part of me that's afraid?
That is gold. That is gold, because I think life, our journey through life, we're going to have experiences where there's more intense triggers and flare-ups of that belief, that not enough belief, or whatever is the problem belief or limiting belief, and it'll be blown up to the proportion that we've been able to handle it, and then it'll probably go a little bit bigger, and then we'll have to grow and be a little bit more resourceful. Right?
Yeah. That's pretty much how it works. That has been my experience of how it works.
Yeah. And also you mentioned about sending it love. Can you tell us a little bit more about that?
Many of our knee-jerk reactions, maybe everybody's reactions, stem from fear. You don't tell someone, well, stop being afraid. You don't tell yourself, cut that out. I mean, you could do that. I have personally not found it very effective.
No.
But if you come from a place of compassion, if I can dive into the psychology a bit, I don't know if you're familiar with the idea of the inner child. Part of my background is seeing the human psyche as kind of a committee where there are different parts of yourself that came about different stages of your life, different purposes, and how do we get them to work together as a team to support you? So if you are frustrated because every time you have a great opportunity come up, you tend to self-sabotage. I think it's important to recognize that if you start beating yourself up about it, that's not really effective.
No.
However, if you recognize that the basis or the impetus for that supposed self-sabotage is an attempt to protect you from something that part of you fears, then you can come back in and look at it and say, okay, what is it that I'm afraid might happen if I go through with this? I mean, just to give a really easy example, say someone has a chance to get promoted at work, and it's an amazing opportunity, but in their mind, they're afraid that if they accept the promotion, they're going to have to spend 60 hours a week at the office and they're never going to see their family. It's important to recognize what is that underlying fear and to thank that part of yourself that is looking out for you, to send love and appreciation for that attempt at protection. I describe it sometimes as if you have a kid who is running out into the road, you grab their arm. And if they're starting to tug their arm and trying to get away from you, you're not going to say, oh, okay, go ahead. You're going to hold on tighter.
Yeah.
But if you come back and say, okay, thank you, then you have a calmer and more present perspective in order to make choices. Instead of fighting against yourself, you can work together as a team and say, okay, I really want this promotion, but I also want to see my family. What can we do to ensure that I retain that connection and still be able to do this and actually address the concern rather than just running away from it?
How do we know if it's ourselves attempting to protect us and keep us safe, or if we're being limited by other people's goals and what should be happening?
There are two things that I've noticed. One of them is just physical sensation. If something is, if something is constricting and we're trying to push against it, that's an indication right there to back up, breathe, and ask what is going on. If something is supposed to be for you, then it's generally expansive.
Yeah.
As far as being able to differentiate between, is this something that really is in harmony with my path, but I'm afraid, versus here's something I think I should be doing. The indicator for me is how big of a story do you have to tell yourself to try to convince yourself to go one way or another. For example, if, say, you want to be a musician and you're afraid that you're going to be broke all the time. If all of the stories in your head are saying, here are all the reasons you shouldn't do this. It's not practical. You're going to be living on the streets, da 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 da. That story is saying, hold on a second. There is something about music that is calling to me. Even if I don't throw everything in and go professionally in that direction, I need to fuel my desire to create music and be involved with music. Need to nurture that part. The other side of that is maybe you have a job opportunity. And if you find yourself saying, well, I should really do this because we need the money and it could be more opportunities and it'll make my mom proud. And if you're giving yourself all of these reasons why you should do it, that's an indication that maybe that's not really your path.
Wow.
When it comes down to it, the truth that is in harmony with the yearning of your heart doesn't need justification. It is. And can I bring out something else in physiology that I think is cool?
Yes.
I've recently been looking at, I think it's called the M brain. Someone was in Australia, they were studying this, and they discovered that there are actual clusters of neural networks that are located around the heart and around the solar plexus in the gut. And what they've discovered is the brain, what we think of as the brain, the cognitive functions, is really skilled at analysis, asking questions, sifting through things. The heart, those neurons measure alignment with your deepest values. And those neurons that are basically around your digestive system are in charge of ensuring your perception of safety. So when people talk about following your heart, there is actual physiological neuron activity going on that is measuring, is this aligned with your values? And I think that's really cool. And when they talk about trusting your gut, I'm like, yeah, that's, now the one thing I have to say about trusting your gut is to clarify that it is perceived safety. It's not necessarily don't do this, but it is saying, come back, look at it, and assess the situation before moving forward.
Wow.
I think that's cool.
This is fascinating, super fascinating, because my business partner, he's very business minded, right? He's all about business, and like that's been his passion his entire life, to be, a billionaire and be successful in business and all this stuff. And he always talks about he makes decisions from his gut, right? And comes from his gut. And I don't hear him, and his head, of course, too.
Yeah.
And I don't hear him as often talking about from his heart. Coming from his heart.
Yeah.
It's interesting how he talks about the head and about his gut, but not as much about the heart. And one other thing that I know is a big concern for him is like security. Security is a very high value, being safe, being certain, security. And so I can see how he trusts his gut. He says, I listen to my gut, and that's the safety that he's constantly wanting to feel, the perceived safety, not necessarily that he's in any kind of danger, but that he wants to be certain. He wants to, trust his footing and make sure everything's going to work out as planned. And it's phenomenal hearing this. It's incredible. It's awesome. Rachel, this is really, really cool stuff. You have a very unique and eloquent way of communicating. How did you develop these skills?
Talking to myself. I actually, going back to junior high school, I have a theatrical background. I loved exploring personas. And some of this goes back to recognizing my perception is not the only one out there. And it's like, what would it be like if I were this other person? Because of that, I love exploring the entire range of human experience. I think that helps me. I like words because they're fun to play with. How do I distill the concept that I'm trying to convey in a way that other people can understand it? And it's something I really enjoy doing. Although it's interesting, the current edition of Navigating Life that's out, I wrote a couple of years ago. I completely revised the first edition because the first time I wrote it, I think he didn't post it, but he said I sounded like one of those math professors standing in front of the classroom that you never quite understood what they were talking about. And that was actually my own insecurity, where I didn't really have faith that I had something to offer. So I kind of automatically framed it in more academic sounding language. So it had the appearance of this is important.
Yes.
But I went back a couple years ago and completely revised it because I realized I'd been getting feedback on the book and people saying that they got a lot out of it. It's like, oh, and that's something I've been learning. And this actually comes back to my path, my journey of learning how to collaborate with others and have that open connection with others, and realizing any energy that I put into trying to prove myself takes energy away from actually being and learning and growing and living. As I'm getting more comfortable with just being me and having faith that, just being me can actually help people. My communication skills have improved because I'm not trying to prove that I know stuff. I'm just saying, hey, here's some stuff that I think is cool that I found useful. Maybe it'll help you.
So I'm curious, what would be the difference if you're coming from, here's what I find is cool and interesting versus here's the truth. And there's almost like, for me, I hear of being convinced and convicted of a perspective of, this is the way that everyone deserves to be, because it's amazing, it's beautiful, it's magical, right? Like all this zealousness that comes from wow, this perspective, this value being fulfilled, this vision of how life can be, everyone deserves to have this. Like, what's the difference, would you say, between those two?
The difference is because I think the promoting the wow, it should be this way, this is amazing, is a lie. Because life is not all unicorns and rainbows. Life is not supposed to be unicorns and rainbows. Part of why we're here is to experience life. In the book I'm working on right now, Deeper Sorrow, Greater Joy, it comes from Khalil Gibran's The Prophet, where he says, the deeper that sorrow carves into my soul, the greater my capacity for joy.
Wow.
We can't, if we only look at everything's supposed to be wonderful and amazing, we lose our roots and we topple, because that's not sustainable. It's not dynamic. The purpose of life is not to be happy all of the time. The purpose of life is to live. Okay. Sorry, I talked about song lyrics. I just had something from the Buffy the Vampire Slayer musical pop into my head. And it's basically, she's saying, give me something to sing about. And the thing is, life isn't bliss. Life is just this. It's living. It's immersing yourself in experiencing, in growing. The reason I'm writing a book on grief is because we need to have something in place that allows us to honor what we have lost.
Yeah.
Because there are no guarantees. We don't know what's going to happen. And we need to be able to accept that dichotomy so that we can throw ourselves into life wholeheartedly, even though knowing we're going to get hurt. Things are going to happen, but that is part of life as well. And honoring that process and learning from it. It's ebb and flow, yin and yang. It's stress and recovery. It's giving and receiving. It's that dynamic flow that deepens and strengthens our experience of life.
This is so good. And something that immediately comes to my mind is I was riding dirt bikes and I would go really fast, and of course I would injure myself. I tore one rotator cuff, minor tear, and healed it back on my own. It took about 6 weeks. And I think it was a couple months later, I'd do the other one. I'm like, oh my God, and so I noticed that I stopped putting myself in situations that used to bring me tons of joy and aliveness and bring an adrenaline rush, because I wanted to protect and keep myself safe and because I'm like, oh, I only have one body. I got to take care of it. I don't want to be having a, whatever might happen that could be permanent, that forever hampers my ability to be athletic and agile and all this kind of stuff.
Yeah.
And so that was a real big concern. And I felt like myself shrink a lot because of that perspective and what I thought was my truth. I got to stay safe. I got to stay away from those dangerous sports. But I also found that that aliveness kind of went with it, and the ability to really experience life. And so now I'm bringing back more of those things, like doing martial arts, even though, there's a potential for danger. Go do it, go. For me, I find fulfillment in learning new things, in self-discipline and connecting with my body. And martial arts is a great way to do that. Yeah, there's a chance for something not going quite as right as I'd like to, but hey, what am I going to do? Sit in my room all day for the rest of my life playing it safe? Or am I going to go out and freaking live?
Well, one of the things that I like to look at, there are 3 stages of dreaming. The first stage for figuring out what it is that you want and really want. The first thing is to go completely all out. If there was nothing in the way, what is it that would light you on fire? And we're talking huge, big, maybe never in a million years possible. But the first thing you need to do is identify it. Then you come back and say, okay, what is the core of that dream that's calling to me? What is yearning to express itself? I mean, you're talking about the adrenaline rush. Identifying that's what I'm looking for. And then the third stage is, okay, now how are ways that I can actively pursue that and activate that in my life now? How do I do that? What I've found is that a lot of people, they look at the pie in the sky and they say, no, that's never going to happen. And then they give up. Whereas if they go through the process of identifying what aspect of it really calls to them, and then honing in on that, you can have a really fulfilling life if you pursue that. I was talking about giving music as an example. Here's the thing. If you fuel that desire, what you're actually doing is not only feeding that feeling now, but you're laying the groundwork for future opportunities. Because if you're ready and if you've done that, even if you're just playing in local coffee shops and things like that, if you're doing that with all your heart, you have no idea who's going to be in that audience. That's right. So you don't do it in order to be discovered. You do it to feed your soul. And people notice when you're alive and they are drawn to it. And opportunities may well crop up that you could never have planned for.
And that's really when you're expressing that energy, it's the most powerful energy that we can express and live and radiate when we're in our purpose and in our gifts, and when we've done the work, the self-analysis and discovery to say, what is it that I truly want? What are my biggest dreams? What is it that's yearning to come through? And then we seek that every single day to bring more of that into our reality. Then as long as we're doing that, we're freaking magnetic to the greatest opportunities. Yeah, this is gold. So also I wanted to ask about your books. What inspired you to write your books?
My work is, we've kind of touched on this. My work is driven by my challenges. Mm-hmm. I have problems doing stuff. I'm one of those people who has these really amazing ideas, and then I have another amazing idea, and then there's something, and the actual like button share getting it done is something that has been a challenge for me. So what I did is I looked at what can I do to help myself accomplish things. And the book was actually very meta, because the entire fact of like publishing a book was the largest project that I had completed.
That's awesome.
Of that sort of nature. And I broke down, well, how did I get it done? What were the processes that I went through in order to get there? What were the systems and the structures that I put into place to carry me when I was at squirrel? And I was like off doing the next bright shiny thing.
Right.
What worked for me? And I saw it as proof of concept of one. Yep. I know that the things that I wrote about in navigating life helped me. There is honesty, there is truth there. It helps. I don't expect them to work for everybody. I don't think everybody needs them, but I know there are people out there who will find this and say, hey, this is really useful. This is the piece that I was missing to allow me to put together my own personal development program. Because that's why I call it strategies instead of steps, because it's not, even though I have what I call Rachel's recipes in there, it's not really do 1, 2, 3, 4, and you will be successful. It's more an exploration of what are the areas that you need to take into account if you want to make a significant change in your life. I mean, I think one of the first ones is the releasing shoulds in other people's goals. You need to decide, you need to figure out, okay, I'm working so hard, but is this really me? Is this what I'm here for? You need to create your own vision. You need to figure out an action plan to move you towards that vision. You need to have ways of tracking your progress. You need ways of how do you get back on course if you fall off? How do you reassess somewhere down the line if the goal that you set, even though it was perfect for you 3 years ago, maybe it's no longer applicable? What are all of these different areas that you need to take into consideration in order to develop a robust system for changing your life? That was the second book that I wrote, Rituals of Release. I was trying to figure out what are practical ways of letting go of the stuff that was holding me down. We go through life and we get through so much and all of it. And after a while, I mean, I entered my second half century last month. That's a while to start accumulating stuff. And things that worked before no longer work. And I was looking for what are ways to simultaneously honor and release what's holding me back. And again, it's back to, if it helps me, maybe it could help. I mean, it will probably help someone else out there as well.
Mhm.
I make a strong differentiation between release and rejection,
Mm.
because if you reject something, that's a constrictive quality. And it may be somewhere down the way, something that doesn't work for you now may well be good then,
Mm.
or something worked really well for you, but it's no longer applicable or
Yeah.
doesn't support you here.
Mm.
So by releasing it, it's an appreciation and a thank you and a recognition that is expansive and makes more room.
Wow. Mm.
I just
Beautiful.
looked at the clock. We're supposed to be wrapping up, aren't
This is
we?
beautiful. This is so good. So good. I love it. So yeah, this is an amazing interview. I know our audience wants to know how they can stay connected with you. What are the next steps that they can take with you, Rachel?
Well, probably the easiest way to connect with me is through my website,
Hmm.
which is thefullnessofyourpower.com.
Okay.
I
Beautiful.
have, it's interesting. I don't have an active mailing list at the moment, but if you want to, you can sign up, because eventually I'll be sending out just little tips, things I've learned, fun things. I do not, I have a mini ebook there called
Mhm.
Map of Life, which is just, it's more of an e-pamphlet
Mhm.
that you can download. I do not require an opt-in in order to download it, although you can if you want to.
Okay.
I've also got some articles there and ways to contact me and other resources.
Mhm.
And I would be more than happy to hear from anybody if you have any questions. Um, I like people. I think
Yeah.
y'all are cool.
I love it. I just like this whole conversation. I'm like, who else do I know who I can introduce Rachel to? Because your energy, your presence, just the way you communicate, it's absolutely beautiful. And however I can support you in getting your message out and getting on more platforms to share your wisdom, I just want to see you thrive, because you got a great spirit, great energy, great heart, and wisdom too to share. And it's your perspective. I get that it's not the truth, but it's really really fun. It's enlightening. It's growth oriented. I feel myself being expansive as you share it. So really, really proud of you, Rachel. Everyone who's listening, watching, live, replay, whatever it might be, stay connected with this woman. Big, big things are happening now and also coming from you, Rachel. I can feel it.
Thank you so much. And if I may say so, you're pretty awesome yourself. I
Yes.
really, back to this energy. This has been so much fun.
Yes.
Yeah.
Thank you, Rachel. You're brilliant, and it's an honor to have you here on our platform. We'll see you very soon, okay?
Sounds great.
All right. Take care.
Thanks.